Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. We have two terrific poets with us today, Phil Taggart and Marsha de la O. Marsha will read first. Marsha de la O's latest book, Every Ravening Thing, Pit Poetry Series, came out in 2019. Her previous book, Antidote for Night, won the 2015 Isabella Gardner Award, BOA editions. Her first book, Black Hope, won the New Issues Press Poetry Prize. She's recently published poems in the New Yorker, the Kenyon Review, and others. She is most proud of her work building connections in the poetry community in the Central Coast region of California. Splendid narratives abound in Marsha's poetry, all told with poignancy, sagacity, and a sense of wonder and strength. I've quoted the ending of her The Day I Was Protected before, but it has stayed with me. Here it is, quote, "Poetry is a place where I can go home to myself safely. There were many days when I couldn't be protected. In a poem, you can work with pain and suffering. You can embrace your joy. You can order the world according to your lights. Finally, you don't have to run away from yourself. You can go home." An astonishing poet, Marsha de la O.
Thank you so much, Harry, for having us both. I have a poem about that addresses the situation in Ukraine to begin with, and then a few others after that. It's called How to Begin. How to begin with ruin, with a bloodied saint, a basalt lion beloved of Ishtar, left shattered in the shards of forgotten cities and dead cities, with stone villages empty now, cats left behind, Byzantine doorways still standing, once known as creme de la creme, as heart of the almond, as hidden pearl. How to take in the bodies, a woman, a man, a mother, a father, their thirst. Please moisten my lips. This hunger the wounded carry for the mercy of water. How to go on with bombs falling, brimstone raining, the shapes of the world changed by fire. Pillars brought down, rebar orphaned by human hands. Can hands still heal? With little kids freezing to death in Idlib, bleeding out in Mariupol, in Syria, in February, in August, in spring, in Ukraine, in the red lakes of autumn, with the hospital in ruins, a child is born. How? Thank you. These next three short poems are explorations of depression. This first one is called Close to Silver. It's easy to believe color is illusion, walking out like this color, a phantom in the night, when wisteria is a shade of pewter, muffled lace cast on concrete. 100 raveling limbs form a labyrinth. It came to pass that loss turned molten. It carries you out like a small boat torn from its mooring. The body wants its verities, but that's what has to be resisted, the idea of touch. Let the moon get as close to silver as you can bear. Let it feed the dark. Take a look at that sheen. Don't you think it carries all the codes for sorrow? If ghosts are charged with longing, maybe we're all ghosts. This yearning, ticking quietly in shadow. These grayscale flowers. Thank you for that one, listening. This one is called Water in Standing Pools. Not the cry of the owl lifting off the black branch on silent wings, not the stranger's face or the thin blue flame, but flaps and freaks of moving shadow. It's possible to move within, and moving make another meaning of the body. The freight of being a girl for a time, released as wind carries most of the weight across the field, with some implication of forest beyond, and the idea you could get there somehow, even if it were only a windbreak, an illusion, but towering like strangers. They tell you what to do, and you do it. Your body accepts them as the ground accepts rain when it finally falls. The way you can be briefly anything, the virgin after her child has been despoiled. Water in standing pools before it transubstantiates, trembling still at each small blow. And should you believe the only power that holds is the force the stranger exercises, but wrong, not so. You're alone always. And still your body bucks beneath the grater. And still you might become a remnant of the light that passed over, a glittering of what once was a chance. Thanks. This next poem is called For Unbinding the Heart. The mind is a flight of stairs into dark. Light touches your body and the moon rises. Body is a broken harp. You chose union, but separation came. Now the moon sheds ice as sound. Now tears fall. Water is hidden inside song. When body touches heart, together they make a place for song. You will recall not only pain, but also gratitude for the way touch changed you and the ways to remain untouched. When the scars heal, the moon is whole again. Rest yourself in the curve of her face and consider how to unbind your heart. Listen for a shadow voice inside the well. Let song be a net woven on water. Thank you. Okay, so my last poem, which is a longer poem, but I haven't had too many chances to read it, so that's why I'm reading it. It was written at a time when it was more like a hotbed of the arts in Ventura, and somebody was creating some music around the myth of Marsyas and Apollo, and that person wanted a poem to go with it. So that's how it came into existence. And regarding the myth of Marsyas and Apollo, Marsyas was a satyr, and Apollo, you know who he was. And Marsyas was a musician, accomplished at what they call the double panpipe. And somehow he agreed to a contest between the two of them, Apollo with his lyre and Marsyas. And they agreed that whoever won the contest could do whatever it was he wanted to the other. So Apollo won. And what he wanted was to flay Marsyas alive. So I've always wondered about that all my life, you know, Apollo, the god of reason and logic and light and math. What explains that brutality? And so when the man who was writing the music asked me to write that poem, I was reading at the time a book, and a biography of Louis Armstrong. And I thought that I wanted to sort of update it to include this idea of who it is that comes up with something completely new and then is badly treated, is flayed. So the poem is called, mostly about Louis Armstrong, but it mentions Marsyas. Whistle keeps on blowing. Then there's the time four trumpet players came in together after hours at the Happy Roan Club in Harlem, where Armstrong was playing the new hot music. They meant to cut him and thought it might take four to do it, spilling each other to wear him down. It must have been something so new, so brilliant, floating in the air like the hand of Apollo on the panpipe, on the lyre, and the ripple into being when air opens and a form is born, a 4-beat pulse under a 2-beat rag. The piano player slapping his foot on the hard wooden floor in a brothel in Storyville, and the quarter notes and pairs of eighths create a rocking motion, which begets a pulse, which begets hot, which jazzes it, and it starts to swing. You can almost see it that way. In the beginning, the pipe playing Marsyas perched on a rock, and the first elemental sound, the ya, 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 purling down through the panpipe, and maybe a fragment of prayer, because he must have known it couldn't derive only from him. Thou art air, thou art the void, O Lord. And beside him, the God of light, face bent over the music and no hint of the horror to come, because whoever imagines the horror to come, the body swollen with fluid, a catheter threaded through an artery directly into the heart, tiny shoes beside huge ankles and feet. No, this is a pastoral scene, a moment when they can believe, almost a romance with nymphs ranged behind the trees, and anyone can see the truth. A rush of breath on the face of water animated it all. And don't we believe in this idol, the little freshettes of color that flare before the darkening in the sky? The golden age spread out behind Marsyas, receding to rose gray. Sadness needs a setting. For instance, any garden, it's all bird song out there in the spicy, bitter verdure. The trill, the throat fill, air heated up in their tiny chambers and hurled out, repeating, thou art fair, thou art fair. Their song is regret, the last ache in the wound of paradise. Though why would anyone believe Louis Armstrong ever regretted his time sentenced to the waif's home for boys? And there one day handed the first cornet, learning fast, till he was the one blowing a call for just about everything they did, for soup, for baths, for awakening. So nothing is not breath. A voice rasping from inside the juke on Perdido Street. Whistle keeps on blowing and I've got my debts to pay. The boys in knickers and black stockings marching in step through the mud streets of Storyville, carrying banged up instruments, and the only variable is time. That instant when he knew to take something simple, declarative, and golden and flatten it a little, let it vibrate out through the end. And if it feels like it will never end and inexplicable, the way you can't get past a certain truth, no matter how often you turn it, you're still up against a self that never wanted to come into being, not on those terms, not coming from that past. Life is no absolute good, and still we want to live. He never backed down. He rose up, they said, like an offended lion. When he got angry, he could really play, while the four sat back and he let go. This is how it's done, boys. The first wobbling notes, valved, longing, a woman leaning into a man held up only by music. Breath joined in huge arcs, passing through this pure cylinder, starting with emptiness. Nobody could cut him. It's not the tune that matters, it's the way you play it. You can play it for laughs when it isn't funny. So when they asked, what do you believe in? He answered, nothing. So I guess you got nothing to disabuse me of. The wheel turning the way he turned it, loose, springy, even brash, turning a phrase, I got my debts to pay, into a clear exposition of the world as it is, with its flattened thirds and sevenths. And what if he believed even when he acted otherwise, believed when he refused to answer? The god, long-muscled, his face bent over the music, and by this time the nymphs had moved closer, were playing the part of butchers, one stripping the skin away like plastic wrap, another holding a propane torch while a Renaissance dog lapped the blood, and the question put, you'd do anything to stay alive, wouldn't you? And hush, the measure of silence, because there's room inside a measure for affirmation and denial. The doctor said they'd agreed to compromise. Nothing else mattered but to go on playing. Sometimes he came to that place where he saw what the music saw, and he was the music. And then the music went on and saw more. So what could it mean, this heart with its dee-dum, wah, shoo, wah, that would stop the beat? It don't mean a thing, a pause, then swaying a little, the beautiful attack, horn straying only slightly from melody, that first element, a rush of breath in the mouth of water. I got a mind to leave this world. and I got a mind to stay. Thank you.
That was fabulous, Marsha. Thank you very much.
Thank
You have the ability, I don't know how you do it, but you get us into your narrative and it just it's not like it's in a tunnel, but you just keep creating this this world. And so the first question, well, let me just say a couple other things first before I continue that. Your poetry is starting with the first one. It was so empathetic, and your sense of compassion and your sense of suffering of the people in the war. And you have an unswerving look at war, and you just have such an enduring heart. And I love your writing. You make each word count, obviously. You have a sense of metaphor and exceptional use of language. And the last one, you know, the music, the harmony, the narrative, your sense of discovery. How do you take us, if you would, we have plenty of time, take us into one of your, the way you wrote this last poem. It's personal, but yet you're creating this narrative, a world that has transcended the surface, but yet I feel the personal in there. How do you go about creating, in particular, this particular poem?
Well, I knew I wanted to have those two stories in there. The one about Apollo, and I wanted to be able to question Apollo, you know, in that. And then at the same time, I had the synchronicity of reading about Louis Armstrong. And then, of course, everything is actually personal too when you do something. So you could say that is the third layer when I put in there. So when I was reading that book about Louis Armstrong, I learned a lot about his life, which was amazing. That the amazing capacity to move into music that way and to have it be such a salvatory force for him. And I just, and I looked at some pictures too. There are various Renaissance pictures that depict the flaying of Marsyas. And so they just put it all together and then started layering the pieces together.
You know, I love that line in there. I don't know if it was yours or you quoted, but you said something or nothing else matters but to go on playing. I mean, that really could relate, you know, have meaning for all of us as poets, as human beings, and you touch the universal. Did you rewrite this particular poem? Did it come in one shot, or how do you work on it in terms of time?
Oh, it took several months. I worked on it over and over and over to get it the way I wanted it. And that, what you said, nothing else matters but to go on playing, that was the exact truth and heart of Louis Armstrong's approach to life.
It's just so beautiful, and the way you describe everything. To go to another subject, if I may, to get a little more to the personal right here. How did you and Phil meet?
How did Phil and I meet? Well, I believe it was, I think it was at a poetry reading. Actually, wasn't it, Phil, at a time when you were, Jeff Kaiser was playing the trumpet and you had a bullhorn and they were inside this little restaurant and he was trying to outdo the trumpet player. So it was very similar to the situation with Louis Armstrong, where people would come and compete with each other, musicians would. And so, and I was sitting there thinking, with my daughter, thinking, oh my God. You know?
And when was this? How long ago?
It was a long time ago. It was in the 90s, in the mid-90s, I'd say.
You two have done a lot of great work together. And I noticed in your bio, you said that one thing that made you most proud was your work in building connections in the poetry community in the Central Coast region of California. That's important to all of us. And I'm real grateful to both of you for all the amazing work that you have done. And it's a blessing to, you know, I once wrote a thing, I said, it's important to have a community of poetry so that each poet can go further. And I also wrote that, I said, poetry is grace and grace is giving. and you both have been very generous in the poetry world. So thank you both for that. Who are a couple of your poets that you read before our time, Marsha, who are important to you in terms of your poetry?
Well, it tends to change over time. I mean, like we all have our deep connections at certain times. Like the last person that I was deeply into was Jennifer Sweeney. And partly, I think, because I had the honor of writing the blurb for her book. So I spent a lot of time with that manuscript. And as I went further and further in, it just opened deeper and deeper. So she's really important. But over the long run, like since the beginning, who has been really important to me, Adrienne Rich has been so important to me, and Larry Levis and Phil Levine and the Fresno Poets. And I would say from the earliest time back into the past, it would have to be Garcia Lorca.
They're all great. Well, thank you once again, Marsha. You're a fabulous poet, and you just you lift us all up. And the word troubadour it comes from the word trobar, to discover. And in your poetry, you help us discover, as you mentioned earlier, 3 layers at least, but it's even deeper than that. You have such a deep resonance and understanding of the vision that you're dealing with inside the poem. And, you're a blessing. So it's a pleasure to have you back on our program once again. And thank you once again, Marsha. Now we'll bring on Phil. Phil Taggart has 4 collections of poetry. The last 2, Walking the Dog in a Time of Rage and Rick Sings Opium Wars, are published by Brandenburg Press. He has been a poetry editor for over 20 years for Art Life Limited Edition, and with Marsha De La O, the Askew Poetry Journal and Spillway. Phil presently hosts a weekly poetry reading at the E.P. Foster Library in Ventura, California. He teaches digital broadcast media at El Camino High School at Ventura College. Phil grew up in South Whittier and lives in Ventura with his wife, Marsha De La O. I admire Phil Taggart not only for his excellent poetry, but for his tremendous contribution to the poetry community for many years. Phil is a superb craftsman who has a keen ear, sharp eye, precision, strength of line. I am always touched by the empathy and compassion in his poetry. Here's a wonderful poet, Phil Taggart.
Thank you very much, Harry. I really appreciate being here and being on this show. I'm on television. This is great. I'm going to read mostly from, let's see, how's this thing work? There you go. From this book. I'm going to read all from Walking the Dog in a Time of Rage. This is a book that I just sort of needed to write because of the crazy times we're living in. And I kind of write a lot as a political poet. And this is a lot of that. That's enough of me saying stuff like that. I'm just going to start. I'm from Los Angeles area. And one of the great things that's happened in Los Angeles is we had this great television that was down here. And one of my favorite things to do was to watch this guy who sold cars. His name was Cal Worthington. And so I've got a poem called Go See Cal. It's got an epigraph by Cal Worthington, of course. Old jalopies on the blink, go see Cal. It's later than you think. Go see Cal. Cal Worthington TV commercial. He calls back to us through the ether, across the somatic divide. You, too, can have this American dream. Buy this car. Drive this asphalt. I will stand upon my head to sell a car. I will stand upon my head till my ears are turning red. Go see Cal. Go see Cal. Go see Cal. Cal drifts west across the desert from the heartland to the promised one. Heat shimmering vision of Azatlan, Angeline, Surf City, giant blue pyramids, and single family tract homes. He touched us in this holy land, sealed in concrete with bikinis, and once upon a time tattooed across dreamy blue raster abundance, complete with palm trees shimmering and swaying with his dog Spot. Thank you. One of my favorite poets is Amy Uematsu, and I want to read she's a person that kind of reminds me that where my poetry needs to be, and where it's kind of the, not where my poetry, but the direction and how we need to be responsible to our community. And this is a favorite poet of hers. It's out of Basic Vocabulary. It's called On Poets. A poet carries the unseen seed for a long time. A poet is both mother and father, collecting bones, leaves, and names with equal anticipation. A poet is most amazed by the gifts of countless moments of amazement. A poet walks on a tightrope of syllables. A poet keeps writing no matter how dangerous. An advocate for the ordinary. A poet can be no less than revolutionary. Feared by most tyrants, a poet cannot hide. A poet begins with nothing and ends with everything, over and over again. A poet inhabits the crowded country of dream and desire, improvising her small portion of words like a jazz musician. A poet sings because it's the only way she knows. A poet keeps giving birth to herself. Amy Uematsu. And now I'm going to read the title poem of the book. It is Walking the Dog in a Time of Rage. The minivan screams by, horn blaring, angry, fist out the window. I must have done something wrong. Rage has become our discourse, our answer, anger, our voice sputtering away in the ether, on the highways, in the ballot box. We are driving through a park, not a very big one, only one entrance, one parking lot. We're approaching. I wonder if he's going to the farmer's market too. My friends online nip at each other, clever quips bite. I pass this vehicle, drive to the other side of the parking lot as far away as possible. This anger swirls inside. We don't know what to do. A white man in his 40s gets out of the van, sets his dachshund down, pulls a baseball bat from the back seat, looks at me. Marsha and I go look for Brussels sprouts, but part of me wants to stay. I'm angry too. Walk over to him. Isn't that how it's supposed to be? Celebrating this rage, consecrated with our blood on the ground flowing. We find yellow squash instead. On the other side of the park, there's the man, his dachshund, his baseball bat. Interesting times we're living through. I really like Neil Gaiman and American Gods. And so I was very much interested in maybe making our own gods a little bit. And so I thought I wanted to address environmental problems. And so I went back to the Godzilla movies, which, as you all know, Godzilla was a protest movie about Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the bikini explosions. But I went to Mothra because Mothra's job in this was to protect the earth. That's what she and the Luminous Twins, the little people that rode on her neck. Mothra and the Luminous Twins before the movies. The twins told her stories when she was larvae, stories of Earth and all who reside here. Mothra mostly ate, ready for change. The twins sang dreams to her in pupa. Cocoon, premonition vibrated through the hardened shell. Hiroshima, Nagasaki, bikini, flashed through Mothra's psalm-fortified cocoon. Radiation immersed the naked pupa. She emerged, imago, an adult enraged in pain. Mothra rose through the searing light, her vision in Koopa expanding. White blinds me, snow falls, all around cinder dust grit. It burns, peels my skin. The Mothra poems are haibun, so I end up with a little haiku. And then I'm going to read some of my walking poems. I was having some rough health for quite a while, and I was having trouble walking. And then this last one, which just knocked me out, I had I hurt my Achilles tendon very bad, and I really couldn't walk. And so one of the things that kind of keeps me sane is walking. So when I got to walk again, I started writing about it. And there's a lot of stuff going on in the world. You guys probably all heard about it. It was on television a lot. And this is me starting walking again, around the block. I walked around the block twice today. Still ankle pain, but it's getting better. We oldies talk a lot about our failing health. It seems a common trope. I circled the block twice today, but it hurts more. Recently discussed with a friend, white Jesus, theocracy, an impartial judiciary. Just another myth, I guess. The outgoing president says he's not going, starts firing professionals at the Pentagon, replaces them with the faithful. Should I be worried? Physical therapy is making a difference. I do want to walk again. A few days back at the door of a COVID Main Street shop, I stopped, peered in, 9 people close together, no masks. Guess those folks are free. Stretch my ankle. When I get home, it hurts a little. This was when we were first starting to be able to get out, and we were supposed to all wear masks. And of course, we all remember the Pentagon. So now I think I'm going to go back to Mothra again. It seems to be the right day. I mean, for all we know, Godzilla is there at the motion picture. I think that's a good chance that that's probably true. I know they're having a resurgent Mothra in Luminous Twins, but they do need a place to stay. Mothra and the Great Pacific Garbage Patch. Mothra and the Twins fly from Hollywood, a TMZ profile, a new album, maybe the Luminous Twins' best. Mothra heard. Australia's on fire. It was time to go. Before MTV's, or was it VH1's Where They Now program was even recorded. Out over the Pacific, the 8th continent, an island, plastic island, size of Texas. Tides swirl, 300 million tons, plastic every year, currents collect waste solid. The Twins just signed a pop culture book deal. Mothra says the book deal means we're over. Not true, the Twins say. It's world affirmation, healing, awareness. Maybe we could land. Mothra senses plastic poisons leach from the island into the sea. Probably not, she says. It's death. Seal static on sand, crabs blanket devour. Seal dead by plastic and coughing. You get some water. I wrote a book about my brother and dealing with him. And one of the things that book, I'm not going to read any of that today, but what it did is gave me an awareness of the homeless community, a really close awareness. Most of them, they knew me because I was Rick's brother. They would come up and talk to me, and they never asked me for money because I was Rick's brother. And so I watch them, and I still watch them. I do little still lifes of them. Here's one. She is sitting on the sidewalk, collapsed into stucco, wall of a bike shop. She says hi when we pass. Sweet voice, red hair. A woman passed her before us. Eyes concerned, looks back. She's new. The homeless tan hasn't darkened, toughened her skin. Red shirt bicycle patrol calling for help's calling the police. The girl lifts up off the sidewalk, straightens, gathers her stuff, walks on. She's maybe 16. I'm going to read this one. Oh, here it is. This is my poem about algorithms. I felt everyone needs to have at least one poem about algorithms. This is mine. I want to be sedated. This was a B-side the boys recorded in '78. It's on my car radio. K-Earth Oldies 101 as I drive into work. Turn up to drown down. Drown out. The LA Times, an extra edition, 2 days in a row, mass killings, mass killing. Although the tune became a staple for the Ramones, arguably their most popular, didn't make the charts back then. A man with a gun walks into a room shooting. Active shooters on the freeways, at concerts, in schools. The song was about touring too much. Overwhelmed, overworked, and only working. Rage and fear turned off social discourse. No discussion, no compromise. This is a riot in slow motion. The radio algorithms that continually pop, I want to be sedated in my car, makes sense, especially now. 24 hours to go. I want to be sedated. I want to be sedated. Now, Marsha has her sadder poem. I got a sadder poem too. As I was doing my Neil Gaiman tribute, I decided I should have my very own satyr, and it should be immortal. And I decided that the satyrs were still around, like Neil Gaiman's gods. They're still around, only they've adjusted to the times. And this satyr, and this would be several satyrs, they're basically by themselves out in the forest or doing something together. But what they do, they get together for high holy days. And this is a high holy day, one of our high holy days, and the satyrs show up for it. The satyrs at the mall. They park their cars at the edge of the mall, approach the temple, high holy days. Acolytes enters, the satyrs follow. These days, a few millennia later, the satyrs just fit in, rarely see each other, but sometimes are called. Pan is with the elves, leaning against, waiting for Whitebeard. Torgos is meditating on the US flag just above Whitebeard's throne altar. Prayers of children are spoken. The elves chant their hosannas. Baby shark dancing doll, walking Buzz Lightyear. Mystery stuffed animals, hand-operated drone, cheaper than dirt AR-15 rifles. The satyrs bear witness. All invocations are heard. This mystical and temporal dilemma, this children's consumer supplication, leaves the earth poisoned. The satyrs miss the forest, retire to a sports bar, remember trees. I think I'll do another Mothra. This time the Mothra goes to Russia, and I include a couple of Russian pop songs, and I know one is a protest group over there, I Speak, and if you listen to the protests and you listen to the background, they're usually singing I Speak songs, and so I use one in here, although I know Russian, I promise. Mothra, the twins, Siberia, and big oil. The twins are silent. Processing this sadness is crushing. Maybe we need to restructure the message, the album. La, 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 la. Mothra says there is diesel oil, dyed red, spilling in Timar, Russia, 6,000 tons onto the tundra in local rivers, 8 inches thick. The twins have I Speak, Moscow, Witch House, electronic duo in their heads, marching. They remember them. Jailed Siberia, remember dancing to This World is Sick. The luminous twins and Mothra sail over the earth to another tragedy. La, 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 la. Rivers run red, slick, covers everything, every pore clogged. Oh, and in my book, I have a what is it called? A playlist for all the albums all the songs. So if you go to my website, philtaggartpoet.com, you can go to playlist and you can hear all the songs. I'm going to come back to LA. My feeling is that Los Angeles, the freeways there are rivers. They are rivers. And I realize I'm having a rough time doing two things at once. It happens as I get older. And so I wrote something. Now, this is a poem about Rick, before Rick passed in 2017. And a bit before he passed, I had this dream. And then I rewrote it after he passed. This is called Dreamtime in the 101 and has an epigraph from The Midnighters. Let's take a trip down Whittier Boulevard. Just past the 405 going south, a Neo-Dharma bum-stickered hybrid SUV passes us. Last night, I dreamt of Rick in the upstairs room on the left, a hidden room always there. Passing vivid, the Ford Theater, I saw the Pogues there, graffiti, crosses, knocked down road signs. In the dream, Rick is leaving. I gather up what is needed. Our paths are so close. Brothers. We cross into Hollywood, the Knickerbocker, the Beatles' Capitol, more crosses, the Shangri-La Lodge, Destiny Inn, the crush of downtown. We are on parallel paths, like moving sidewalks, drawn close together. We touch, then drift apart. Bronx and Spring Street, J-Town, Ozatlan, Brew 102, and beautiful bridges. Rick, Ramparts, and Tommies. I wave. The car hurtles down past the 605, South Whittier and on. Rick is absorbed and distanced. He waves back. Goodbye. Yeah, I was talking to some LA people recently, and only a couple of them remembered Brew 102. Let's see what I'm doing here. Okay, 21. I haven't embarrassed myself enough yet, so I think I'll read this one. This is called On 99. It's in the San Joaquin Valley. Around Selma, Jesus is Lord. Breast augmentation billboards side by side. A mile on, we see that Madame Sophie will tell you the truth is Jesus, or maybe it is bigger and bigger, but possibly it's both. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to read a couple more. Yeah, okay, I'm good. Okay, this is another poem that I can't find when I want it. There it is. This is a poem called Sometimes I'm Just Lucky. And it has an epigraph from The Apocalypse, local singer-songwriter, I got lost looking for an answer. An email tells me the FBI discovered through the intelligence monitoring network I am eligible for, have a lawful right to, a gold smart card, number 512-8156-1062. The sky is blue, a beautiful blue. Helicopters are out and the drones chatter away. There is the mandatory one-time fee I have to pay before I can receive the card. Then 2 to 3 working days later, my card will arrive. Of course, I have to pay for shipping, but I can use this card all over the planet. Today, the drones talk to me. Usually they just buzz around, sparkle in the sun, glow in the moonlight. Finally, I am to contact the Seattle office of the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, Courier and Director Distribution Officer, Mr. Richard Thompson at yahoo.com. All the voices connect me, sparking off in my head. Warm, comfort, reason. It all makes sense now. Okay. This is my last poem, and all of you that are poets in this crowd have been at this open mic at one time or another. Open mic across from bus station. The middle-aged man at the mic goes on about masturbation, chat room cyber sex, and Jesus. Scary guy, really. Reads directly off his laptop, no time limit in a mostly empty room. I wonder if he's online now, chatting. He says without Jesus, he's trapped in depravity. Thank God for Jesus. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Phil, for your fabulous reading. I love the way you embrace humanity, your empathy for the homelessness, your love of your brother. How old was your brother when he passed on?
Let's see, he would have been years ago. He was just turning 60.
50. And another question that comes out of your poetry, how's your health?
Oh, my health is better. I'm still walking. I'm walking. I fell down a few weeks ago. I found out a really amazing thing that old people are not supposed to fall down.
Your poetry is so conscious and so concise, and you have such a beautiful imagination. You talked a couple of films, or actually the one film that I know of. Do you have just a specific love of Godzilla and Mothra, or you have a love of movies in general?
Well, I do love movies in general, but I remember the Godzilla movies quite well. I think that I thought they were really quite wonderful, and monster movies at that period were great.
I love the way you started out the reading with your poem about Cal Worthington. I remember those vividly. There was another guy, was his name Ralph Winters? Somebody like that, around that same time, that there were a bunch of them. And as I asked Marsha, just take me on one of your poems, like it could be the one, let's just take your walking poem. You're such a concise observer, and I always have the feeling I'm with you, and that I understand your landscape and the humanity of it. Everything is familiar. Do you rewrite let's take your poems on, as I mentioned, Rick, do you rewrite those poems, or do you just write them and go on? How do you do that? Because you have, as you said, you have a book of them.
No, I believe in in workshopping. I really love to workshop. I've got some really wonderful, talented workshops that I'm a part of, and I rewrite. I take notes, and then I try to bring them down into something. Yes, that's good. I think for me anyway, I think I need to rewrite. I can't do it. without it.
I've seen you mature over the years. You know, we read together years ago at the Carnegie Art Museum that your friend Jackson Wheeler did. He was also a marvelous poet, as you two are. When did you begin your work in the art community and the print issues of, what was that, Art Life? Was that the big art magazine you did? You did so many of those, and I'm always thankful you included me in some of them. When did you begin that work, and how long did that last? And then just how did you segue into the video aspect of it all?
Well, actually, Art Life, you know, I got involved in the arts in Ventura sometime in the 80s. And then I was starting to write mostly performance stuff at that time. And then I started segueing, and that's when I ran into Jackson Wheeler. And, you know, and I was fortunate to work in Art Life. It was a crazy, crazy idea to have an handmade art thing, art poetry magazine published once a month for a year. And I did that for about 10 years. And Joe Cardella ran that for 25 years. And then I got, one of the things that was really wonderful when Marsha and I got together, we realized Art Life had just ended, but we wanted to still do poetry. We wanted to do poetry, but it cost a lot to buy those Art Life books. So we did something called a SKU, which wasn't done every month. And so we could charge people $5. And we broke even with it, which was all you could ever hope for poetry.
SQ is a wonderful little mag. I love that one too. You two have both done a marvelous job, and it's really an honor for us to have you on the show for the first time, Phil, and you, Marsha, again. And we hope that you will honor us, you know, in the future again sometime. And here's our wonderful director who makes all of the shows happen. This is just one of the programs that she does all day for 3 days a week. It used to be 4 days a week, and they're varied. But thank you once again. And here's Jennifer to take us home.
I again just want to thank you guys. We're hearing from different people. I don't know if you guys are seeing all of the comments that came through. How about Rev Jean? That's the latest. I don't know if you guys have an answer to that question.
Oh, Jean. Oh, yeah, Reverend Jean. Love Reverend Jean. I don't know where he is right now, but I loved him.
He might be attending. Let me look really quick. Thank you so much for being with us. You are absolutely welcome at any time. And as a reminder to those who are watching, in 2 weeks, it's our big 100th. If you want to send information or greetings or anything to Harry in advance of that show, by all means, please do, because Harry gives me a lot of credit, way more than is due to me. He's the producer. He's pulled everybody together. He's brought all of these amazing artists into our world. We could not be more grateful. Thank you, Harry.
Thank you, Jennifer.